Odion Archetype, also known as the Temple of the Kings archetype, originally started out as a handful of cards used by Odion during his one and only duel in the Battle City Finals. His deck, which would later get the name of a Trap Hell deck, heavily relied on the usage of many trap cards to control the opponent's plays and disrupt their strategies. The goal with a Trap Hell deck is to essentially slow the pace of the game down exponentially, causing your opponent to be really fumbled by this. They can't get off their plays in the way that they want to. So the board that they wanted to make, well, it's not quite what they wanted to make. And so what do? You strike. In fact, I think Yugioh explains this best. He says trap cards don't just have the power to turn the tables of a duel. They also have the power to inflict emotional damage.
Emotional damage!
Which is true. The mind games of playing against a trap-based deck that has, say, 5 set mysterious cards on the field, well, it can really make you overthink and second-guess yourself, causing you to self-destruct. The most iconic cards in his deck were his trap monsters, the embodiment of Apophis, his Anubis traps, Curse and Judgment, as well as his most iconic cards, Temple of the Kings, along with its guardian, Mystical Beast Circuit. In the real world, Odion's cards would debut in the 2010 structure deck, Marek, which I have right here. I still have it. Look, there's Circuit itself. There he is. This deck more so was themed around the Gravekeeper archetype. However, it did have some of Marek's unique cards thrown in, along with Odion's Temple of the King and Mystical Beast Circuit. Cards like Embodiment of Apophis wouldn't release until later in Gold Series Haunted Mine. And in terms of Odion support, well, the closest thing we would ever get was in 2022, we got an upgraded form of this Apophis monster with Apophis the Swamp Deity. It not only had better stats than the original when it was summoned, but when it was summoned, it could also negate the effects of face-up cards the opponent controlled, up to the number of other continuous traps you controlled until the end of the turn. Honestly, it's a fantastic card, but even with this, we could barely call this hodgepodge of cards together an Odion deck. Or at least we couldn't until today. With the release of 2025's Maze of the Master, like his sister Ishizu, who had her anime cards drastically upgraded, Odion would receive the same, even getting a card form of himself in the same way that Ishizu did. The way the new version of the deck works is it's essentially still a Trap Hell deck. The goal is to disrupt and annoy the hell out of your opponent, then go for a devastating strike when their board is broken. With the new field spell, improved boss monsters, and even greater traps, this deck became even more capable of going on the offensive. So with that in mind, let's take a look at each of the new Odion cards, what original card they were based on, and what they can do. Let's start first with the Man with the Mark. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can take one Temple of the Kings or one spell and trap that mentions it from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to your grave. While you control Temple of the Kings, this card and Apophis monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Temple of the Kings you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. To understand why this Odion monster protects its fellow Apophis monsters as well as the Temple of the Kings itself, well, we need to go back a little bit. Back to Odion's backstory. You see, Odion was adopted into the Ishtar family, as they were unable to conceive a child. While loved by his mother, their father resented Odion as he sought a son of his own to become heir to the Tomb Keeper's legacy. Eventually, Odion's mother would convince her husband to allow Odion to become the next Tomb Keeper. However, miraculously, 2 children would be born to them. A daughter, Ishizu, followed by a son, and now heir, Marek. Mrs. Ishtar unfortunately died giving birth to Marek. However, with her last breath, she asked Odion to take care of his siblings. Odion initially hated Marek, for his birth meant he could no longer be Tomb Keeper, and with Mrs. Ishtar gone, Mr. Ishtar had no one to hold him back from his maliciousness. He would begin to treat Odion as nothing more than a servant whose only goal is to serve the true heir, Marek. In fact, Odion considered killing Marek after he was bitten by a snake. However, while in a fever dream, Marek called out to Odion, calling him his brother. Odion, immediately after hearing this, abandoned any hatred for him, since he realized Marek saw him as family, despite them not being blood related. Eventually, the Tomb Keeper ritual was forced upon Marek, having the secrets of the pharaoh carved onto his back. The pain was tremendous. Odion, as a show of loyalty to Mark, disfigured his own face in a similar fashion, promising that he will protect Marek no matter what. Which is a really long way of saying that's why he protects his fellow monsters and the field spell itself, because he promised to protect him forever. Anyway, this monster's other ability lets you add the core card of this deck, Treasure of the Kings, which is based on Temple of the Kings. When it is activated, you can set one Apophis trap from your deck. This card's name becomes Temple of the Kings while in the field zone. Once per turn, if you have 2 or more set cards on your field, or a trap in your grave, you can add one monster that mentions Temple of the Kings from your deck to your hand. The original card that this is based on, Temple of the Kings, is actually still used in modern day Odion decks, which is something I always like to see. These old nostalgia decks, when they get new upgraded forms, sometimes you just transition all the cards into new forms and the old ones get left by the wayside. It's nice to see these old cards still make plays, because you know what? It's still pretty good. This is because it had the ability that a user could activate a trap card the turn it was set. You could also send one Mystical Beast of Serket in your monster zone, and this card you control to the graveyard to special summon one monster from your hand or deck, or one fusion monster from your extra deck. In the anime, this ability was used to summon out the Winged Dragon of Ra, albeit a fake one. However, now in the real world, you can summon whatever you want. It's also worth mentioning that in the anime, if Temple of the Kings was on the field and Odion played 2 specific cards alongside it, it would get out his boss monster, Serket, which in the anime appeared as a ritual monster that may or may not have been summoned from outside of the deck, because that might be how ritual monsters work in the ye olde anime, but fun fact about him anyway. The 2 cards that would need to be played alongside it were Cup of Sealed Souls and Seal of Serket. And one of these got a retrained version, Defense of the Temple. Fusion summon one Earth fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field. If you use a monster you control that mentions Temple of the Kings, you can also use face-up monsters your opponent controls as material. If you control Temple of the Kings, you can banish this card from your graveyard, add one Dangers of the Divine from your deck to your hand. Now, thanks to this card, we can actually make 2 of the fusion forms. However, one of them is probably the one that you're going to be using the use the opponent's monsters for part of its summon, but we'll start with this one first. Divine Serpent Apophis requires 2 monsters that mention Temple of the Kings, must either be fusion summoned or special summoned by tributing 2 Apophis monsters. Once per turn, you can target up to 3 Apophis traps with different names in your grave, set them. Once per turn, if a trap card is activated, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. This fusion monster is most likely a combination of either 2 of the Apophis traps or all 3 of them all together, all smushed into a single deity. Following this card, we have Divine Scorpion Beast of Serket. Requires 1 Serket monster plus 1 monster with 2500 or less attack, which means that you can use your opponent's monsters with the fusion spell if you really want to. If this card is special summoned, or at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, or in their grave, banish it. And if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the banished monster's original attack. Can make a second attack during each battle phase, while a level 10 or higher monster is banished. Now, what's interesting about this card is Serket already has another upgraded form we're going to talk about in this archetype, a main deck version. This is the fusion version. The fusion version is actually a reference to what Serket did in the anime, because when it destroyed a monster, it absorbs it. But in the anime, it also takes on the characteristics of the monster it destroyed. And this monster is actually the spitting image of the form it took when it absorbed Jinzo. But you see, in the anime, after Serket destroyed Jinzo, it would absorb it, gain its power, and take on its likeness. Following this, it would then destroy and absorb Insect Queen, followed by Legendary Fisherman. Each time, it would change its appearance and gain more power. However, that begs an interesting question. Are we going to get more forms of this monster requiring maybe higher attack point monsters as part of its super poly ability that you use with a fusion spell? And each one would take on the new forms that we have. So I wonder, is there 2 more forms of this card we're going to get in the future based on the Legendary Fisherman and the Insect Queen absorption? Only time will tell. Now it's also worth noting that the fusion spell has a graveyard ability that lets you add the new unique card to this archetype, Dangers of the Divine. Pay half your life points, then tribute 1 monster. Special summon 1, the Winged Dragon of Ra, from your hand or banishment, ignoring its summoning conditions. Make its attack and defense 4,000, but it cannot attack. Also, during the end phase of the next turn, return it to the hand. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, choose 1, the Winged Dragon of Ra in your monster zone, and send all of the monsters on the field to the graveyard. This is such a cool reference to throw in the deck. Basically, with this card, you can summon a fake Winged Dragon of Ra. It's the real one, but it is completely unable to attack, just like the real one did, because it was going ballistic. It started attacking everything on the field, including the duelists themselves, which this card's ability to send all monsters on the field to the grave is a reference to. Honestly, any deck that adds a little bit of Egyptian god flair into their archetype, I think is really cool, so I'm glad that they paid homage to this. And just to address the elephant in the room, yes, it did suck that Odion essentially threw the duel against Joey just to appease Marek. Merciless Scorpion of Serket, based on Mystical Beast of Serket. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 level 10 or higher monster from your hand or deck, while you control Temple of the Kings. You can only special summon Merciless Scorpion of Serket once per turn this way. Once per turn during your main phase, you can add 1 Temple of the Kings or 1 spell that mentions it from your deck to your hand. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster's original attack. Basically, this card is a much better version of this card right here. This one only gained like 500 attack every time it absorbed a monster, and it couldn't exist without Temple of the Kings on the field. This guy, a big step up. Apophis the Serpent, based on embodiment of Apophis and Apophis the Swamp Deity. Special summon this card as a normal monster. Then you can set 1 Apophis trap from your deck, except Apophis the Serpent. It can be activated this turn. If this card is sent to the grave, you can add 1 embodiment of Apophis from your deck to your hand. Basically, these 3 snakes work perfectly in tandem with each other. You play Apophis the Serpent, it gets you to Apophis the Swamp Deity, and then when it goes to the grave, you get the final embodiment of Apophis into your hand. Verdict of Anubis, based on Judgment of Anubis and Curse of Anubis. When your opponent activates a spell/trap card while you control 3 or more other spells or traps, negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card. Then, if you control Temple of the Kings, you can destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the total original attack of those destroyed monsters. This trap's effect to wipe the field after being used and then deal damage is actually the effect of the anime Judgment of Anubis. We even see a reference to it in the card artwork, with Joey's monsters making an appearance. You can't have a trap deck without even more trap cards to fill up the deck. Plus, Odion seems to be heavily tied to Anubis himself, so these Anubis traps work really well with his deck. Which is interesting because they actually made the Anubis monster into a monster for this archetype. Anubis the Last Judge. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand or grave, while you have 3 or more cards in your graveyard with different names that are Temple of the Kings and or traps, by placing 2 of them on the bottom of the deck in any order. You can send this card from your hand to the grave, add 1 the Man with a Mark from your deck to your hand. If a spell/trap you control is destroyed by card effect, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. Anubis is the Egyptian god of the underworld. The Tomb Keepers have very heavy associations with the underworld, death, the pharaoh and all that, so it's kind of fitting. It's just part of his deck. And now we've got like Yugioh archetype, which is Egyptian themed. We've had the Odion archetype, Egyptian themed as well. Marek needs to get a full retrain of his deck, I think. I know you could probably make the case that the Gravekeepers are his deck, but I feel like he deserves his own full-fledged deck based on the cards he used. Get Lava Golem involved, I guess get those holding chains. He's got loads of cards you could work into it. So yeah, with that, that's the Odion archetype done. Let me know what you think of it in the comments section below, and if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot. But other than that, check out one of these videos if you fancy. All the best. Bye, everyone.